Hi, so my name is Steven Sloss. This is not a very good impression at all.
And my name is Roz Menzies.
Nailed it, mate. You forgot the
Hi everyone, my name is Ross. I am here today to talk to you about Godzilla versus what was it called, Stephen?
Well, actually, the original title in the Japanese is...
Oh, yes, of course, yes. Oh, yeah, that's right, yeah. No, that's fine, yeah, of course, yeah, that's fine, yeah. This is the Kaijusaurus Podcast, and we are back, finally...
Back at it again!
Reviewing all 30 plus films in the Godzilla series. 30 plus truly now, Ross.
Yeah, no, truly.
Because there's been much developments in the Kaiju world since we last spoke.
Rally them off.
Well, for starters, Shin Godzilla's hit Blu-ray and DVD in Japan, so there's plenty of...
Can I get that on my Blu-ray? If I bought that, would that work on my Blu-ray?
No.
Okay, cool.
And there's no subtitles anyway.
Oh, well. I can deal with that.
But I'll hook you up.
Cool, bro.
And,
cheers, bro.
Anyway, and Polygon Pictures, who's producing the upcoming Godzilla anime film, scheduled for November this year, have announced that it's going to be the first part of a trilogy.
That's really cool.
And it's called Godzilla Monster Planet.
So, will there be debate? Will the animated films count as official Godzilla films?
Yeah, well, they're through Toho Animation.
Oh, that's fine then.
So,
good enough for you? Good enough
exactly.
for me? It should be good enough for you.
I
don't want to hear anything otherwise, guys.
It's a theatrical film that has the Godzilla name, and it counts.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's my criteria.
You just, in case that becomes an issue later on, you just set that down now.
Gosh, what else? And as everyone should know by now, Netflix has acquired the international distribution rights for Godzilla Monster Planet.
Oh, really?
So
it's for the anime will be...
It's going to go theatrical in Japan,
That'll
and then
be really
soon
good.
after, worldwide, instantly on Netflix.
Do you think there's a chance of that happening for Shin Godzilla?
Nah.
Different for a live action film, I guess.
Polygon Pictures, the studio that Toho is doing the animation with, has dealt with Netflix before.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And
so it's more through them.
To me, Shin Godzilla, it might end up in Netflix in other countries,
Like
but
any other
not-
film, but
yeah,
it doesn't deserve. It deserves like regular cinematic releases.
I don't think it's going to go like Netflix.
Netflix original.
Yeah, that whole noise.
that whole story.
Other stuff. Kong Skull Island has come out.
You saw that?
I've seen it twice now. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what you're wanting from the kind of American Godzillas and
yeah.
legendary
and
films.
It's a great addition to Legendary's Monsterverse, and like I said to you earlier, spoiler alert for Kong Skull Island, but there's fun teases to future Godzilla movies there. So yeah.
Like no one didn't know that.
Yeah.
I never got a chance to see it.
No, we'll watch it at some point, I'm sure.
I'm sure we will, absolutely.
No, it's a really, really fun movie. It's really good. So we now have an unprecedented 5 Godzilla films currently in production.
That's amazing.
We have-
What a time to be alive. Truly.
Well, exactly, isn't it? We have Godzilla Monster Planet Parts 1, 2, and 3. Godzilla King of the Monsters, Legendary's next film. And Godzilla vs. Kong.
Great.
For 2020.
Oh, that's good.
So,
and at the crest of this Godzilla wave are the Kaijusaurus Podcast boys.
The boys are back.
In town.
And finally we're back doing our reviews of the films.
Yeah, back on the film train.
Our last film we watched and reviewed together was 1989's Godzilla vs. Biollante. Since then, we also did an episode on Shin Godzilla and its screening at Fright Fest at the Glasgow Film Festival. But the subject of
today's
podcast is
this hot, fresh, spicy episode
is 1991's Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah,
or
Gojira Tai King Ghidorah.
Good.
Thank you.
See?
Thank you.
Just tested.
This is the first film of the 1990s
Yeah.
and the third film of the hasty
90s kids,
period.
what's up? You don't remember Godzilla versus King Ghidorah, then you're not a fucking 90s kid.
This, Ross, was my first Godzilla movie.
Yeah.
I saw it back in the late summer of the year 2000.
How old were you? What, like 7?
I was 7. Yeah.
And this was this your? Were you immediately really into Godzilla after this, or did it take a
After
while?
this, I was hooked.
Yeah.
Couldn't get enough.
Oh, what was it about it? Do you know? Can you tell
No.
me? There was just a little spark and a little A burst of love.
Something just awoke in me. When I remember first watching this, like early on a Saturday morning, back in 2000, and
Why'd you watch it? Did you like someone put it on? Was
Well,
it just in the house?
my family and I had recently been on a holiday down to Skegness in England, and my dad and I were in a video shop, and he found this video, Godzilla versus King Ghidorah, and he said, "Oh, Stephen, I think you'd enjoy this." And I was like, "Okay, Dad." I'd heard of Godzilla, but I wasn't familiar. What an innocent time. That sounds weird to say that.
Pre and post.
Yeah. My pre-Godzilla life is very short, to be fair.
It's pointless.
7.5 years. Yeah, I didn't really live. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, sure, I'll think about it. And later in that holiday, I bought The Lost World Jurassic Park on video.
Thematic.
And when we got back home, we watched The Lost World, and I didn't like it, and I was scared of it.
Oh, little Steven.
I was disappointed in it. So to cheer me up, my parents gave me something that they were holding off for my birthday, which was the video of Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, which my dad had bought in Skegness and brought home to surprise me with. And ever since,
you've been hooked.
Hooked on a feeling.
Hooked on a Godzilla.
So there's...
That's my
origin, my origin story.
Godzilla Origins, Steven.
Kaijusaurus Podcast Origins.
What's mine? Like 2 years ago. So, the first well, you can watch it live. The first episode of the Kaijusaurus Podcast. That is my Godzilla Origins.
So Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah was my first Godzilla film.
In 1991 it was made.
Yes, written and directed by Kazuki Omori, who also directed the previous film, Godzilla vs. Biollante.
Which I liked.
You liked that? Yeah, that's an interesting movie. There's a lot going on there. And there's a lot going on in this film.
Who produced it?
Tomoyuki Tanaka and Shogo
TT.
Tomiyama.
Oh, TT.
Akira Ifukube, legendary composer of the series, is back on the music after having his music repurposed, shall we say, in the previous film.
Remixed.
His daughter said to him, "Dad, they're going to use your music anyway, you may as well be the one using it."
That's a fair point.
And he was like, cool.
Young Ifukube makes a strong point. Miss Ifukube. So what's the kind of context of this film getting made? Is there any stories as far as...
Yes.
Right.
This is ultimately the third version of the film that Toho had planned for 1991. Toho originally planned for their 1991 movie to restage King Kong versus Godzilla.
Oh.
By this point, the King Kong rights were held by Universal, I think.
Okay.
Fun in, quotation marks, tangent. The legal history of King Kong is extremely convoluted, and I don't really understand it.
You should make a podcast where you try to attempt to learn it.
You can have a giant gorilla character called Kong, but you can't refer to it as King Kong.
Oh, so Prince, Duke, Lord Kong is fine.
Duke
Provost Kong.
Provost. Mayor.
Lord Mayor Kong.
President Kong.
Lord Mayor Kong.
Toho wanted to do an updated version of King Kong versus Godzilla, but Universal were asking far too much for the rights to Kong character.
You would, eh?
Well, you would, I suppose. If you were sitting on that, yeah. Well, not that they were actually doing anything with the license at that point, but yeah.
But yeah,
so when that was shut down, Toho planned to make a film called Godzilla versus Mechanicong.
Ooh.
Mechanicong is a giant mechanical doppelganger that first appeared in 1967 Toho movie King Kong Escapes.
Right.
Toho fights his giant robot twin, Mechanicong. And this was a licensed Kong film that Toho made.
So Toho's doing like their own King Kong movies as well,
This was back in the 60s.
Right.
But Toho wanted to revive this character, Mechanicong, as this kind of substitute. We can do Godzilla versus Mechanicong because that's their character. But Universal stepped in and were like, no, that's too similar.
Nah, cut it off, guys.
So, third attempt, Toho decided to bring back another of their most iconic monsters, to bring back King Ghidorah, unseen on the screen for 19 years by this point. Last seen him in Godzilla vs. Gigan in 1972, and Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah was born.
Uh-huh.
What did you think of this movie, Ross? Well, this is probably no surprise, guys, but I really liked it.
Well, this is probably no surprise, guys, but I really liked it. Yeah, I really liked it. Would have thought. It's a fucking mess. There's so much happening in it. It's amazing.
Some could argue too much.
One absolutely would argue. It's one of those ones where I'm absolutely riveted by the human storyline. I got a little sleepy at the very end.
You did.
But I wasn't missing too much. It was just a monster's
You know
fight.
how I could tell?
How?
Because you quietened right down.
Yeah, I stopped making jokes. Well, I thought we'd come up with a really good system, because normally I get tired much earlier, but I hadn't eaten, so I made a pizza and ate it the first half of the film, and I was fucking rife with energy, cracking with jokes. But yeah, you're right.
What kind of pizza was it?
Just a margarita.
I like a margarita.
I like a margarita.
A plain cheese.
A plain cheese. It's a margarita. It's a fine art. I'll swing a pepperoni.
A fine arterita.
But I am against pineapple, sweet corn, chicken. None of these things should be on pizza. No, I don't really care. Have what you want on your pizza.
I'll take chicken on a pizza.
I'm actually not against chicken on a pizza.
No, it's fine, guys. I'm actually no, whatever you like.
But sweet corn can.
Get fucked.
And pineapple as well. Shit, I am shaming pineapple pizza eaters. So I really like this one. I just found it really fun to watch, and maybe actually one of my favourite, kind of just in terms of how balls to the wall, fun and ridiculous it is. And I think the real important thing is that it actually is very aware of how silly it all is.
Yeah, I think it has a self-awareness to it.
Yeah, and I think for the first film in the 90s, it's just, first of all, just beyond it being really fun to see Godzilla make it all the way to 1991, and just kind of how well shot some of the movie is, I would say. And if I'm right, you were saying that the money, the budget for these films is getting less and less as we go on. Am I right in saying that, or did I make that up?
I don't think I said that.
Okay, I must have made that up. That must have come up. Pretty decent budget for this film.
That was certainly the case in the Showa series.
Right, but not quite now as we're getting out there.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like while I didn't necessarily think, as far as the monster fighting goes, and especially as far as King Ghidorah goes, it wasn't necessarily the best special effects.
Yeah, it's not.
I felt it made a pretty good use of just kind of masking that fact and made do what they did. Yeah. And clearly all that money went into like set design and all the human stuff and the World War II stuff. So I think just that this movie did a lot different and kind of went a place as far as sort of time travel and historical fiction and ahistorical rewriting of history stuff, when I found it really interesting to see like the Godzilla series almost like approach and try to attempt to talk about World War II.
Yeah.
And a little bit of that side of things. So I really did enjoy it.
Cool. This is one of these films.
What about you?
I'm biased because this is the film that got me into not just Godzilla but the whole genre.
Totally.
I'm totally aware of its flaws, but I love it. I love it unconditionally.
Yeah. Oh no. I certainly don't need to be too hard on it, but kind of the last little chunk I was flagging a bit.
Yeah.
I'll explain why later.
That's cool.
Just because
No, I certainly have a special place in my heart for this film. And yeah, I love it unconditionally, despite, the older you get, you realise it's maybe not such a well put together film. Like, practically.
Parts of it were like amazing clockwork, and I was impressed with how everything was slipping together, especially at the kind of early on. I was like, this movie is really... Yeah. Everything's firing out perfectly, but as it goes on and falls into the classic trap of having to deal with time travel anomalies.
Yes. Well, what I was going to say on that subject is that I don't know if there's much point in us trying to do a plot synopsis for this movie.
Maybe not.
Basically, time travelers from the future come back to Japan to warn them that one day Godzilla will destroy the country and leave it devastated for good.
Yeah.
And from there, a whole bunch of shit happens.
So we'll try and do it really quickly. So the time travelers warn that because of Godzilla, there will be nuclear devastation in future Japan,
and there's Japan
Japan will no longer exist.
Yeah.
So their solution that they present to present day Japanese Prime Minister and his aides is
to wipe Godzilla from history.
To wipe Godzilla from history, and they suggest the best way to do that is to return to 1944, when Godzilla was first made known
As a dinosaur.
As a dinosaur
Island.
on Lagos Island when he presented himself to a conflict between American soldiers and a Japanese base there on the island. So they assemble a team of a journalist or a non-fiction...
A non-fiction writer.
a non-fiction story writer, yeah.
A dinosaur expert.
A dinosaur expert.
And Miki Sakusa, the young psychic from the previous movie, Godzilla vs. Biollante. And together they go back in time with the quote-unquote Futurians, as some fans dub them, but I think that's dumb because they're literally just people.
Yeah, they're nice, normal people. They're like you or me. They're doing what's right for their future nation.
Well. And so they go back to the 40s and try and prevent the birth of Godzilla, which, they, as far as they're concerned, they managed to do. But the future people have an ulterior motive, or at least 2 out of 3 of them do. And
2 out of 3 ain't bad. 2 out of 3 are bad.
You mean Wilson and Glenn Chico?
Yes.
Me and you.
Yeah, no, that's so we had a lot. We'll talk about our castings.
We'll just jump forward. The future people create King Ghidorah using the blast that was meant to create Godzilla, and King Ghidorah ravages present-day Japan in an attempt to create an alternate future where there is no Japan. Turns out they're lying, because in the far future, Japan is actually mega prosperous and is actually like this
a superpower,
this horrible,
this like horrible imperial conglomerate. But then they mention it's like a corporation. It's like a ultra capitalist, horror nation that owns most of the earth. Yeah, it's complicated.
But then when they're back in the future, trying to revive King Ghidorah, Emmy's whatever he is, supervisor, whatever, says, "You want to do all this for a country that was ravaged by a monster and left uninhabitable?" It's like,
yeah, so
what was the truth?
There's actually, it doesn't tell you.
What was the truth?
Was Japan a superpower? Did she make that up?
Yeah.
Were they right?
Yeah. Wilson and Glenn Chico were telling the truth.
It's evident that our synopsis has completely collapsed because
much like the film's story.
Yeah.
So basically, in the end, King Ghidorah comes back from the future to defend Japan against Godzilla as Mecha King Ghidorah, and they drive him out to sea.
Yeah, and
that's it.
Godzilla wakes up.
Godzilla wakes up, and Emmy returns back
to her homeland,
to the future. Great Scott. So, opening thoughts.
So as far as just the human story goes, I am really liking the performers. The main guy, Terasawa.
Yeah.
Really kind of funny, really entertaining.
He's really good.
He is really good. That was your first initial casting.
Yeah.
That's you as world famous Kaiju author, non-fiction.
I only write non-fiction articles about Kaiju for Fright Fest brochures.
And it was really nice having this almost like proper quest style adventure. You've got your trio of leads, and the second that almost we've done a bit of introductions, we've introduced the Futurians.
Why?
It's decent.
It's
the
dumb.
future guys.
The Fuchies.
The Fuchies. So the Fuchies have come and essentially given the plan to the Prime Minister and said, we want to assemble a team. And the second, essentially, the words assemble a team come out and they go, okay, we've got the journalist, the scientist, the psychic. Yeah. I was loving it.
Who doesn't really do much.
Yeah, she doesn't do much, but she's lovely and really cute. And she has kind of cute ears. Where are we going from now? I'm kind of lost. I'll just start again. So the second that they say the words assemble the team and they bring out, we want the scientist, the journalist, the psychic, I'm loving it. That is what I want. It is a quest through time. And then once time travel becomes involved, I was just really impressed. I was really pleased to see where this would go. And it was satisfying because it is actually very different from the kinds of human stories that we've had before. And a lot of them, and a number of these, they've been kind of repetitive. The journalists investigating Godzilla. The sailors investigating Godzilla. But this was a very different attitude. We're going to go back in time and almost just observe and get involved with things that happened in World War II. So early on in the movie, the writer Terasawa, get his name right?
Yes.
excellent.
Yeah, you did.
Terusawa is speaking to, well, two different soldiers that once fought in World War II. They were both stationed at Lagos. One is sort of an elderly chef, restaurateur type.
Yeah.
And then the other is Shindo, the sort of rich corporate.
Yeah, he's a head of a huge company.
He's a huge company.
The Toho Group, I think it was.
Toho Group,
like
yeah.
And he was on Lagos Island and witnessed the dinosaur that saved the Japanese regiment from the American troops.
Yeah.
Ross.
Uh-huh.
Here's a question.
Yeah.
That has long bothered this film.
Right.
Is this film, one, nationalistic for Japan? Two, anti-American? Or three, both? Or is it none?
Really, I mean, that's the main thing I wanted to talk about, because like politically,
something of both in there.
Yeah, absolutely. The politically, this film is so weird, and there is so much going on, almost conflicting at times, and so much to unpack with it. So to just start with,
it's especially strange coming from a series like the Godzilla series, which has always stressed international cooperation between countries and nations and leaders, and so I absolutely would not say the Godzilla series is nationalistic.
No, certainly,
but this film kind
this
of
film
is.
I mean, it's interesting because it's you spend a lot of time with Japanese soldiers in World War II. It is something of a little, within the context of the film, in that particular scene, it is something of a triumph for them when
they
fight off the American
this
soldiers.
Dinosaur, which has no allegiance to anyone, suddenly appears on an island and
totally helps out Japan.
massacres the American troops.
Fucking
obliterates.
And it's almost like Godzilla's Japan's weapon.
Yeah,
he's their nuclear bomb. But then it's interesting because they make the point of saying that, Shindo, for example, one of these soldiers who was lucky to be sort of rescued by Godzilla, has become this rich capitalist, rich businessman. And I believe there's a line that says that sort of a lot of these guys, and him in particular, were kind of responsible for Reconstruction.
Yeah, rebuilding something post-war. Yeah.
And you get the sense of by kind of how big the corporation is, that there's sort of like a mainstay to Japan.
Yeah.
The idea is there. But then this company obviously ends up being the basis of this new kind of ultra awful Japanese empire that we hear about in the possible future. Yeah. As well as owning their own private fleet of nuclear capable submarines. So once we got into that element of the film, I was thinking, okay, well, are they actually aware of what they're doing? Is there an intention here? The answer is I don't really know.
Yeah.
But that felt a bit more intentional, a bit more understanding that it's complex. Because I think at face value, you could take a scene where Godzilla destroys a fleet of American soldiers and the Japanese
are left unscathed.
And left kind of in awe and respectful and kind of thankful. At face value, I could totally maybe get that interpretation. I'm just trying to think about the whole film and go, does it go beyond that? I'm not really sure.
Yeah, because like you said, we're given conflicting stories about what possible future Japan will face. And in the end, we don't really know which one's true.
Yeah, well, that's it as well.
There's either the humble route in which Japan is obliterated by Godzilla, or the
kind of awful,
where it's a super totalitarian worldwide dictatorship.
That owns South America and owns Africa, as continents.
Is that idea national?
Yeah, I mean, it would be, but I mean, is the film actually supporting that? Is the film mourning?
Ultimately, I don't think the film set out to be that way. Nationalism is not its modus operandi. I think Tomoyuki Tanaka, the the producer,
Yeah.
long-time series producer, deliberately requested in the third act that Godzilla be destroying the financial district of Tokyo, which is all these huge skyscrapers that dwarf even him. They even dwarf him at the stage where they say, "Oh, he's much bigger now."
Yeah.
And this is the financial district of Tokyo.
Oh, right.
Because Tanaka called those skyscrapers it's something along the lines of the vain construct of our profitable times.
Yeah.
And he wanted to see those
Destroyed.
as
And then ultimately Godzilla kills Shindo.
Godzilla does kill Shindo, yeah.
So because of that,
Shindo considered Godzilla as the dinosaur back in World War II to be his garrison's savior.
yeah, and his ally.
His ally, yeah. Is this then saying that Godzilla has no allegiance?
Or certainly won't be used in any one way or to anyone's kind of wish. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to unpack, but I do think it is trying to take that idea and kind of reject it or to do something with it. And while you can argue maybe it doesn't do it quite effectively enough. So, I wouldn't necessarily say this was like a nationalistic film necessarily. But I do think that's a conversation worth having, and I do think the vibe is there. I will admit, the vibe was there when I was watching it. As the film progressed, and I saw that it was a bit more back and forth. I was willing to go, okay, I think there's a conversation in there.
Yeah. To me, it's, we're presented with two possible future Japans, and what the film is saying is these don't have to be the only ways.
Oh, certainly. Yeah, I mean...
But as far as the film being anti-American or anti-West, again, I don't think it's like a deliberate statement. Yeah, the dinosaur slaughters American soldiers, and the two main villains are Caucasian males. But
I don't really think that.
No,
I mean that's something you could probably argue more in what was one of the earlier ones. I think the Godzilla. I can't remember their names. The one that was either the last one or the one before we watched, where it was much more the one where you've got Russia and America both wanting to bomb.
Return of Godzilla.
The Return of Godzilla. I mean, I feel like that was the one that was a bit more like kind of scathing towards the states and how the states' relationship with Japan in a way that I don't strictly feel is true for this one. I mean, sure you can argue like it's kind of. I don't even know if it is weird to show lots of American soldiers being killed in kind of weird flimsy ways. It's not like America doesn't
it's not
do
like
that.
it's
It's not like America doesn't make films about their guys.
Well, I mean, yeah, and it's not as if it's like gruesome or graphic.
Yeah, exactly.
In terms of the two main villains,
The soldiers seem pretty nice, to be honest.
in terms of the two main villains being Caucasian, there's a sense of removal though that this is a genre film and that they are from the far future. You know what I mean? It's clearly not. They're not identifiable to
any particular.
Yeah.
And you can at the same time, at the end of the day, with their allies, M11, other Caucasian guy, he's on side. He's all right. Yeah, we'll talk all about M11.
Do you love M11?
I love M11. But to wrap up the kind of conversation we're having there, which is really interesting.
This is the beefy stuff.
This is the hottest takes.
This is the meat.
The meat. On the subject of the film. And what day is it? Today's the 29th of March. Did you notice, Stephen, that the future organisation that rules a lot of the world is called the Earth Union?
The Earth Union, yeah.
Or the EU. And Japan appears to be in some sort of conflict with the EU. In many ways, it feels like perhaps they left the EU.
It's too real.
It's too real. Too real. No, I just thought it was really funny.
Article 50 was triggered today. Right?
Yeah, well, that's right. You're right. So it's all clicking together. It's a prophetic film in some ways.
Come on, wee Nicola.
I know. You're Nicola.
So the film hinges on this hook, this construct
of time travel.
Time travel into Godzilla.
How long ago did Back to the Future finish? What was the last one? 89?
Yes. No, 1990. Back to the Future Part 3 was 1990.
Yeah, okay.
Although
Guess what they were watching?
well, you know, this film does take heavily from other Hollywood
Oh yeah,
productions.
no,
But, you know,
Terminator as well.
This film relies on the hook that you know, Godzilla's secret origins.
Yeah, we're gonna
For the first time, we like in depth explore Godzilla's origins
and
in
what
terms of like
actually
hard
happened to him.
storytelling. Yeah,
And King Ghidorah.
This film, yeah, true, but you know, different continuity. And
yeah,
King Ghidorah was an alien in the previous.
Yeah,
films,
exactly.
and,
It's weird.
I prefer him as an alien, but whatever.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, so this film presents the take that Godzilla was once an unidentified species of dinosaur that survived through until at least 1944.
And lived on Lagos.
Lived on Lagos Island and was undisturbed until 1944 as part of the Pacific Wars and World War II. The theory posits that this island was part of the atomic bomb tests carried out by the US, and this dinosaur became Godzilla. The Godzilla we
know and love.
know. And, you know, the film also posits that the removal of this dinosaur from that location at that time would result in the removal of Godzilla from the timeline. And it doesn't quite work.
No,
Because
it really doesn't.
They do remove the Godzillasaurus, as it's dubbed, from the timeline. They move it elsewhere so that it won't be irradiated by the bomb. But when they get back to the future, to the present day, everyone says, "Oh, Godzilla has disappeared. Godzilla's not here. Godzilla's disappeared from history, etc., etc." But you remember him.
Yeah, everyone remembers him.
Everyone remembers
and
him.
then he's there.
And he's there.
Under the water.
Like before they carry out their plan
Yeah.
to re-irradiate the dinosaur.
They don't do anything, do they?
They don't do it. No, Godzilla's already still there.
And it's not explained.
Like, there's a line in the dub where Wilson says, no, it's Glenn Chico, I think, says something like, "Oh, in this nuclear age, I guess the second birth of Godzilla was inevitable," which, you know, is sort of a throwaway line, but it's at least they've got that box ticked.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And I suppose, you know, in a nuclear world, you know, maybe the creation of Godzilla would be inevitable within the fiction of that world, but I think it's just a bit sloppy.
Very
screenwriting.
confusing.
It's very confusing.
I was very confused.
And
near the end, I was kind of lost.
Dear,
Well, I was getting a bit sleepy, but that's no excuse.
dear
of the
listeners, I will give you my hot take on this film, which I was presenting Ross with through while we were watching it, and I absolutely in no way am implying that this absolutely was the intent of the filmmakers involved. What I am saying is this is how I interpret and take the movie.
And then your redub is what you will explain.
The dinosaur, the Godzillasaurus, which everyone say, you know, oh, this thing was bombed and became Godzilla. It became the Godzilla we all know, and this thing saved Shindo, and now it's come back to modern day Japan to save us again. That dinosaur was never Godzilla. They just got it wrong. The future people just got it very wrong.
Crossed their wires.
Because
they read Thingy's book and he was wrong as well.
They read a book by Terasawa, which he's not yet written, but he's going to write.
A sports almanac.
And which the fucking sports almanac from Back to the Future Part 2, right? Like,
but it's wrong.
Like, that's
that's
what's going on here.
It's basically what it is.
So,
old Biff shows up.
Grayson's Sports Almanac. Wilson does look a bit like Biff. Grayson's Sports Almanac. Tetsuo, not Tetsuo. Fucking Terasawa's book.
Stephen, why do you get all these names wrong?
Which they bring back from the future.
Yes.
And use it as their base to say, this dinosaur was Godzilla. We're going to take it out of time and then Godzilla's not going to exist. To me, that dinosaur was never Godzilla. It was just
some random dinosaur.
It was just some random poor anomaly.
They got kidnapped.
That was in the wrong place
at the wrong time.
And I got shot to pieces. And to add insult to injury, it then got teleported off its home.
And never really...
put in the cold sea.
Yeah, that's it. So they put it in the sea, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. That poor dinosaur, we'll say at the start of that film. But yeah, no, that works. That actually makes sense in that now. And then the plot works.
Yeah, and Godzilla's just...
there.
He's always just existed, much like he did in the unaltered timeline. I don't really see it as an altered timeline, because it's clearly not.
Yeah, what happened. Nothing changed.
They go back to the exact same future or present day that they left from. Nothing has changed.
Yeah.
If Godzilla was removed from the timeline, it would be an entirely different Japan. their mission wouldn't have existed in the first place.
So when they came back, I was geared up and I was very excited. I thought, oh my goodness, they're going to come back to a world where instead we're just going to have a very different Japan, and we're going to see what happened to Japan. Maybe, they make the line that the reconstruction effort was in part to Shindo, see what happens when that's not the case. Shindo's maybe dead, or maybe the Legion didn't make it, or something like that. And to see a totally radically changed Japan, and maybe one where the EU are in charge or something like that, or just it's definitely been played with. But no, I mean, I was like, oh, it's the exact same.
The timeline is not altered in a single way, except that King Ghidorah has suddenly shown up.
Yeah, but he could well have been nearby.
The film involves time travel.
As my favourite television show Lost would say, in regards to time travel, what happened.
There we go. But they don't even they say Godzilla disappeared, and in his place King Ghidorah has appeared. But they don't do an interesting thing where it could have been like, here's decades of what King Ghidorah's done to Japan. Yeah. Instead of Godzilla being there.
Well, I thought that that would have
been... King Ghidorah first appeared in 1954. And Godzilla was never there. And Japan's in ruins.
And he's a scourge.
Yeah, this fucking
he comes back
monster's been destroying this country for 40 years. But they don't do that.
No, that would have been so interesting, though.
King Ghidorah just appears in 1991 for the first time. And yeah, that dinosaur was never Godzilla in any
just some
timeline.
Random guy.
It was just some poor
schmo,
anomalous thing that survived. Even when they get back to the present day in the quote-unquote altered timeline, the physicist character at the Paranormal Institute says, "Oh, Godzilla's vanished from our scanners or whatever. Godzilla's just vanished." It's like, Godzilla vanishes all the time.
Yeah, it's his usual thing. Because otherwise, as far as the actual story goes, the Godzilla that fights at the end is a different Godzilla, right? That's supposed to just be a dinosaur. It's never really explained because they keep saying that it is, but he was just down there.
No, well, yeah, they say
that it's a new reborn Godzilla.
Their plan is to
make a new one.
Is to find the dinosaur corpse.
In
1991, irradiate it with a nuclear bomb from a privately owned company.
And there's just another random...
From Shindo's company. And from that, create a new Godzilla to fight King Ghidorah. But when they get down in the ocean to do that, Godzilla's already there. Yes. He's already existing. He's already...
chilling out.
He's there. He was never taken out of the timeline.
Yeah, evidently. And
when they say, I think the characters in this film are just all reinterpreting things. Because, that nuclear sub is sent down to create Godzilla, but instead it meets Godzilla, and Godzilla destroys it.
Yeah.
And then when Godzilla emerges, now bigger and stronger, one of the characters, Dobashi, says, oh, it's much bigger. It was created with modern nuclear weapons this time, so it makes sense it'd be bigger. But he wasn't created with them.
He's already there.
He's literally just fucking absorbed them. The ones that you just sent down to him.
Yeah, idiot.
I think all the characters in this film are just
wrong.
Massively misinterpreting
they're just
history.
Yeah, they're just incorrect.
So yeah, my take on the film is that poor dinosaur was never Godzilla in any timeline.
That is so funny. Because it makes the scene with Shindo really funny.
Well, see, that's something that kind of confirms it for me. Like, maybe Shindo was a bit, warped in his beliefs that he had this sort of spiritual saviory connection to this dinosaur. But
yeah, so he sees it. He's like, "Oh, Godzilla, my old friend, it's good to see you again. You're gonna save us." Nah, it's just some random. You don't know.
You saved us back then, and now you're destroying us. Like, it wasn't him.
Some other guy. You're talking about. You've got mistaken for someone else, buddy.
I'm not saying it in some sort of stupid fan way. It's like, oh, Godzilla didn't start life as a mere dinosaur.
Yeah.
The king didn't start life like that.
You're fighting. You've no issue with that. It's just the way the film presents it doesn't make any actual sense.
There is a huge article written on a website called Sci-Fi Japan, which goes in depth to the time travel of this movie and tries to make sense of it, and does to an extent. And I'll link it in the show notes.
Yeah, I would like to
read that. But I haven't
that.
read it in years, so I can't remember what their conclusions are. But that is what I think. That dinosaur was never Godzilla, and Godzilla was never erased from the timelines. The only thing that changed is that the dough rats were left in 1944, and those were irradiated. Then King Ghidorah showed up in 91. Godzilla was unaltered.
Yeah, That makes a lot of sense. I'm going to use this time for a second and get up on my soapbox in conversation with time travel to talk about a little pet peeve that I have. And it's about how people talk about time travel movies.
Oh, but I haven't annoyed you.
No. In this film in particular, I would say the time travel doesn't really make sense. In that literally...
No, it's a fucking mess.
Yeah, it's a mess in that genuinely how it's explained through the plot, it doesn't work. I am specifically talking about people that get really mad about time travel in films and in TV and try to use sort of scientific arguments
Shall
about
we
it.
say Looper?
Shall we say, well, this is it. Yeah, Looper is my main example. Looper's a solidly fun film. Yeah. The time travel makes sense in that it's explained well within the context of the film.
Of that story.
And
film,
how time
the story
travel works.
that film is trying to tell.
So, yeah, sure, you can say, oh, well, time travel doesn't work that way. But I can say to you, time travel's not real. You can say, well, technically, but... And
time travel
throw
is...
Stephen Hawking at me, but I quit physics.
You can say... Time
so
travel,
I wouldn't know what you're talking about.
Time travel is hypothetically possible.
Yeah,
it's
it's
hypothetical / impossible conditions. Then it's not possible. Yeah. It's not real.
And
time travel's not real. Godzilla's not real.
A film that I really don't like, which is... Oh, God, what's it called? What's that time travel movie that everyone really likes?
There's many. Time after time, H.G. Wells goes after Jack the Ripper. The Time Machine.
I'm going to need to Google this really quickly and then we'll...
Either Rod Taylor or Guy Pearce goes into the future and finds it overrun by Morlocks. Back to the Future, Marty McFly goes back in time to make sure his parents conceive him. The Terminator, a cyborg from the far future, comes back in time to destroy the mother of the resistance leader. Terminator 2, Judgment Day, reverse of the first movie.
Time travel movie, low budget. Who's that famous low budget one?
Famous low budget time travel movie.
That's got Primer. Right.
Primer, right.
Yeah. And I contrast this with a film that I really don't enjoy, which is Primer.
I'm keeping all of that in.
Everyone I talk to about Primer tells me how very accurate the time travel is in that movie.
Accurate to what?
Yeah, exactly. And how, yeah, it's true. If you go back and watch that movie, there's so much happening, but all the time travel makes sense, all these different timelines properly work, and all of it clicks together, and it's really intelligently done. It's just a very, very boring movie. It bores me so much.
Yeah, it doesn't make a good movie.
Looper is entertaining, Bruce Willis has got weird hair in it, Joseph Gordon-Levitt's doing his best impression of Bruce Willis'
You've got that really horrible one shot where it's transition.
He's half Bruce Willis, he's half Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
It's Bruce Willis with Joseph Gordon-Levitt hair.
Yeah,
and it's gross.
But yeah, so at the end of the day, what I need from time travel is for it to be well explained in the context of the film as any piece of exposition. It just needs to be well exposition to me.
Which it is not in this movie.
Which is not in Thingy.
Yeah. But it doesn't exactly derail the movie.
No, it doesn't. Just sort of makes part of the mess and the fun of it.
It makes the film's first half more fun and exciting than the second half.
Well, yeah. The first half is... Because, the first half is... You've got 1990s modern Japan, which is really fun to watch, and a pretty entertaining lead who is pretty funny without actually intentionally being funny.
Yeah,
totally. He's not cracking really a lot of jokes. He's just got this real, I'm a writer, I'm doing my writerly thing. Element about him that makes him really energetic and fun. Yeah, he's exactly. He's sitting in the Starbucks complaining to his publishers and stuff. And then you go into this alternate history, World War II time travel thing, and then you've got obviously us spending a lot of time on this alien ship, and the introduction of the aliens feels very Galaxy Quest, which I love so much.
Tim Allen could play Wilson.
Tim Allen could play Wilson. We were thinking, the actors kept reminding me of other people. The one I was saying that actually could have played Wilson, the purple guy, because he's got really intense eyes, and that weird slick back hair, would be
Michael Sheen, was it?
Michael Sheen would have been a good one as well, but the other one would have been God, what's his name?
Richard E. Grant.
Richard E. Grant would have been great as that alien. How good would he have been?
Paul McGann as
with Paul McGann as the other one. That would have been great. Should we talk about M11 now?
Lead on.
Let's talk about M11.
What was your thoughts on M11?
Best robot in all of cinema. Fuck R2D2. Fuck 3CPO. Fuck even Babette.
Baby. Fuck Mechagodzilla.
M11
Crack
is
Mechanic
king.
Kong.
I want to see M11 fight BB-8.
Could M11 beat the Terminator?
Yes.
It's faster.
He is faster. Yeah, no, absolutely, because the M11 was in a car explosion and didn't even lose his. He lost like a bit on his arm, but his face was fine. Terminator 2, just skins get ripped off left and right.
Yeah.
But M11 is without doubt stronger, harder, better, faster, stronger.
What Terminator are they on now? Terminator 6. Because they made Terminator, Terminator 2, Terminator 3.
Oh, there's only two Terminators.
Terminator Salvation and Terminator Genesis. Which I never saw. So the 6th movie should be M11 coming back to the future to fight the Terminators.
Absolutely. So M11
the
is
actor
great.
who portrayed M11, Mr. Robert Scott Field, is an American gentleman living in Japan.
Oh yeah.
And he's fluent in Japanese, as you can see in the film. He went over there to pursue a baseball career, I believe.
Right.
And somehow got into
Film.
this. Yeah. And ever since this movie, he has been hugely active in the fandom, which is really, really nice. He is he's a core part of the organisation of G-Fest every year.
Really?
He attends every year, both as a helper, part of the organisation, and as a guest.
Oh, that's cool.
Which is really cool.
Have you met him?
Yes.
Was he there?
Yep. Everyone fucking loves him there. Honestly, everyone fucking loves him.
I bet.
Yeah.
He seems like M11 is such like a charming character. Is his little smile. Like he's a friendly robot. He's got a cute smile.
Good. My boss.
My boss. And he turns to the good side. He's a goodie, and he's great.
Involuntarily, but so yes, I've met Mr. Robert Scott Field. I told him that he was in the first Godzilla movie I ever saw, and I got a photo. I've got a few photos with him of us doing sort of M11 running pose.
Oh, the running was so good.
And I've got a DVD up there signed by him, which I'll show you once
Oh,
we're
please
done.
do.
M11 is in the car chase scene. It's a prime example of the growing influence of Hollywood movies in the second run of Godzilla movies, which previously spoken about. We'd previously spoken about things like the influence of The Thing on the Return of Godzilla, and there was a lot of influence of Hollywood movies, like Aliens and stuff like that on Godzilla vs. Biollante. In this, our big influences are sort of Gremlins and
Back to the Future.
what's the other
Terminator.
one? Like Critters? Is it Critters? Is the other? It's the rip-off series of
Yeah,
Gremlins. It's Critters.
probably.
Like with the Dorats, the three sort of little
mousy
domesticated
things.
monsters that become King Ghidorah.
Ghidorah.
And obviously, time travel to an extent, Back to the Future.
I
And
mean, even just in terms of design, in terms of the kind of stuff they do with time travel, certainly Back to the Future.
Sure, yeah,
Which is a
okay,
movie
yeah.
about like how time travel works.
Yeah, and
the
having to
screen and the
ruining,
almanac.
yeah, ruining and fixing timelines.
Yeah.
Oh, and of course, Terusawa's book is Grayson's Sports Almanac from Part 2.
Yeah.
Just on a related note, and this is just something that makes me want to do a general filmy podcast. I think Back to the Future Part 2 is one of the most clever and underrated sequels ever
Oh
made.
yeah.
It is.
It is so good.
It's staggering how much there is to that movie. It's. I don't think I even yet fully appreciate it.
Yeah, no, and there's beats to Back to the Future Part 2 that I like associate more with just the general film or the general franchise, and I think strongly about it. Going, no, that's all Part 2.
The climax of Back to the Future Part 2, where the DeLorean is zapped with the lightning and Doc is sent spiraling through time, and he ends up in the Old West in 1885.
He's in the Old West, but he's alive.
Yeah, and suddenly this car pulls up to Marty, and it's a Western Union worker, and he says, "We've had this letter for the past 80 years."
And it's Lindsay's dad from Freaks and Geeks.
It's oh shit, so it is. Oh wow, okay. And yeah, it's like, see, when I first saw that, I could not fucking wrap my head around
Yeah,
it.
it is
But
great.
It's that scene with the Western Union man is it's one of the most clever fucking things I have ever seen put on film, and I fucking love it, and I don't see it discussed often enough.
No, that scene is so good.
It's just incredible. Like, as it plays out, it catches up with you what's happening. Like, just in that instant, the whole timeline is
And just it's
reset
swept
and-
clean, and you don't need to worry about what came before. And
Yeah.
priority now is the next film.
so Good. Oh, Back to the Future Part 2. If you want to hear us talk about Back to the Future Part 2, we'll start our Back to the Future podcast, or general film podcast.
Yeah.
Which, you know,
we
do.
Well,
you know,
it's in the cards. It's in there.
We don't seem to find enough time to do this anyway.
Once Godzilla is put to bed, a new podcast.
But it's just going to keep going.
That's true.
We're just going to keep announcing more Godzilla films.
This is true. But we can't.
Well, since starting this podcast, there's been 6 films added to the slate.
Breaking news.
Shin Godzilla, Monster Planet 1, 2, and 3. And King of the Monsters, and Godzilla vs. Kong.
We've been there.
And if we want to chuck it in, since it's canon with Godzilla films, Skull Island.
Oh yeah, totally. It's part of the realm. We're doing well. We're part of this zone.
Exactly.
We're part of this Godzilla gripe.
But I think where I spun off on that tangent was that I was saying that Hollywood movies influenced Back to the Future. M11 is just it's a direct lift from the Terminator.
Oh yeah.
There's no
way.
Even
he looks like
even the way he's shot.
Yeah.
Like in this scene where he comes out of the car crash and we've got a sort of a close up side profile and it pans up his body as it's charred and it's revealing some of the cybernetic exoskeleton inside him.
He looks like the T-1000, which is thingy.
Robert Patrick.
Okay. But he's
on
there.
Yeah.
Totes.
Yeah, I mean, there's some features and...
Oh, yeah. No, he totally is a Terminator. It also works. He does also look like Robert Patrick as well, so it even adds to that.
There's absolutely no debate. That's a direct lift. It's not even... Like, you can't just say it's a tip of the hat and an homage.
On the subject of Robert Patrick...
That's what I would call a rip-off.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm not saying that to his detriment. There's homage and there's rip-off.
Yeah.
This is rip-off.
Totally.
And that's it.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it.
Absolutely. The time travel stuff... I would say is much more just borrowing
Inspired
by, inspiration. But yeah, I mean, it's very the Terminator.
What were you going to say about Robert Patrick?
It's not important. Sorry, I just threw my pen. When I worked as a tour guide on a sort of tour bus around Stirling, on one of my days off, I looked on Facebook for the company I worked for, and we would generally just post things that are relevant to tourism in the area and go, Robert Patrick was at Stirling Castle today.
Oh no.
Here he is meeting all these people. And I was like, no! Because my bus would go to Stirling Castle like on the reg.
Yeah.
Could have been on my bus.
On the reg.
That's
short for regular?
Yeah.
Cool.
So I never met Robert Patrick. Never met him.
A cast member from The Office was recently in Stirling.
Was he?
And Laura and I are, as you know, Ross,
big
fans of the US Office. And she was Instagramming like, we're in Stirling Castle, and we were like, we're gonna like run up and, but it was
Lady Gaga expressed like genuine interest in moving to Stirling. Nah, don't hen.
Lady Gaga would make an excellent future villain in a Godzilla film.
Oh, she absolutely would. If Lady Gaga was maybe famous in like the 70s, she would have been in one of the 90s Godzillas. Absolutely.
Lady Gaga.
I've done a really bad fart, Steven. I just want to make you aware.
I mean, okay.
Just so you know.
Do you have any... I'm going to sneeze. Ross, take over.
So,
Do you have anything else you wish to talk about?
Not really.
Vis-a-vis Gojira.
Vis-a-vis.
What do you think of King Ghidorah in the film itself? Because we haven't spoken about the monsters much.
Yeah, true. King Ghidorah didn't look great.
Did you not think so?
Nah, they didn't do... I mean...
Don't you backtrack now.
No, when King Ghidorah was flying, it didn't look good.
Mm-hmm.
And in many cases, it was almost like a still picture of King Ghidorah just flying around.
Yeah, that's an unfortunate thing that starts in these 90s movies, is a lot of the monster destruction is monsters matted into the background of real world locations.
Yeah.
So and
it doesn't
there's
quite
a
look as good.
distinct barrier between like what the footage looks like.
Yeah, and it didn't quite look so good. But that's also what I meant earlier when I said it does a good job of kind of masking it, hiding it, because it didn't bother me. It's just, you know, to answer honestly, it doesn't look particularly great. On close up, his head's kind of look cool, especially when he's got the third kind of mecha.
Yeah, what do you think of Mecha Ghidorah?
Pretty sick, pretty cool looking. But on the whole, I think you said ages ago that kind of King Ghidorah is most interesting in his first film, and then after that kind of stops being cool.
Yeah,
because he's always constantly like created by someone else or in charge.
Exactly.
Someone else's little minion.
In this movie, it could have easily been like an original monster, like a new monster or something. It didn't have to be King Ghidorah.
Whereas the first one, there's a personality. It's all unstoppable beast of demonic Lovecraftian space mystery. But
King Ghidorah has no agency in this movie.
Yeah, he's
it's out under the control of the future
could
people.
Have been Rodan.
Sorry,
it could have been Rodan.
It could have been Rodan. Yeah, Mecha Rodan. But
Mecha Giant Condor.
Yeah, like there's no reason for the monster in this movie to be King Ghidorah.
Yeah,
it's box office branding.
Totally.
Big name.
It's just a big name.
Having said that, it doesn't particularly bother me. But King Ghidorah has no agency. He's either under the control of the future people or in his mecha form under the control of Emmy.
Mm-hmm.
So he's
just a vessel.
Ghidorah is most interesting when acting independently of its own volition, and very rarely does it do that.
Godzilla looked cool. I think that costume's been used before. He's
a beefy boy in this one.
Beefy, he's thick with 2 C's. Good healthy thighs.
Yeah,
he's looking healthy.
Real kaiju have curves.
Yeah, exactly. No, that was a good costume. Always good to see Godzilla. For the most part, this was a film where I didn't find the monster fighting particularly inventive.
There's a scene in the middle of the movie
exciting.
where we just suddenly cut to fighter jets combating King Ghidorah. And it adds nothing to the movie.
Yeah.
It could just be taken out completely. And it to me, this movie falls into the same pratfalls as Godzilla vs. Biollante did, which is, you have a really, really interesting setup in first act. You have Godzilla fight the first form of the monster in the middle of, in the mid to late middle of the movie. And then you have a solo Godzilla rampage for a bit.
That's it. See, once the alien stuff had been dealt with, and we just had to deal with another 50 minutes of Godzilla being kind of loose in Japan, I was kind of not losing interest.
It was less
interesting.
And then once the solo Godzilla rampage is done, we have Godzilla combating the next form of the title monster, which happens. What I just described there could be either Biollante or King Ghidorah.
That's it.
It's the exact same.
I didn't need that egg. That could have actually been a shorter film.
I agree.
Because of that. I was kind of gearing up for it all to be wrapped up just once the aliens were dealt with, and that would have been a really strong ending. But we kind of keep going.
And Godzilla does take his time showing up in this movie.
But he does.
It's not to the film's detriment. There's no reason. There's no real reason for him to show up before.
To show up any earlier.
And I tell you what, he doesn't show up any earlier because that dinosaur's not Godzilla.
The old timey pictures of kind of what I will call old time Godzilla. I'll be a truther. I'll be a real. I'll be what text tells me. The old pictures of Godzilla and the sort of the ahistorical nature of just Godzilla's been with us since World War II and helped tide the turn of these battles. I found that kind of stuff so interesting. So Shindo's pictures of old Godzilla and when the guys were looking over them were great.
Shindo's a really interesting character.
Absolutely is. Kind of not like he's not villainous. In that he isn't doing anything particularly villainous, but at the same time, the film certainly does disagree with his ultimate outlook.
Absolutely,
and what he represents, and his capital, and his wealth, and what he's done, and what he will do, what his company will do
potentially in one of possible futures.
So it certainly doesn't agree with him or like him, but he's not villainous. He doesn't want to stop the guy.
I don't think
he actually helps the guy. He actually tries to help.
He's a fairly tragic character, I think.
That's it. He is tragic.
He's sort of lost in his own time, I think.
And his scene where he salutes and leads the sort of salute march to the injured Godzilla in Langley Island. Lagos Island is really touching.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
really like that moment.
Do you know in where Shindo stays inside his skyscraper office during Godzilla's rampage and he looks out to Godzilla and then is killed? Do you interpret that as a suicide or a self-sacrifice, or because I think it's very easy to interpret it as a suicide or perhaps not a suicide but a willingness to die, which I do think are separate things. Do you know what I mean?
No, totally. I mean, there's certainly an element of that. Certainly willingness to kind of go with his fate.
But I think there's also possibly a little thing of there that he genuinely believes he's in no danger.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to interpret. I mean, when in another Godzilla film has a human character stared into Godzilla's eyes for so long, and
actually at his level,
on his level, at each other's eyes, with a sense of regard and a sense of history, never before. It is really interesting. There is a lot to interpret there.
Yeah.
It's certainly, the first time I watched it, I was getting more of the kind of almost the comeuppance, almost the put too much faith in Godzilla, or too much of an expectation.
That's a way to put it as well, yeah.
Now that you've kind of brought it up to me, I certainly actually can see what you mean about it being much more of a willingness to kind of just get this over with, and a willingness to
meet his destiny.
That kind of pointlessness of what he's done.
I can see that. It's almost recompense for the sort of decadent capitalist lifestyle he's led since the war. He's almost forgotten who he was.
Totally. The last thing I want to talk about,
absolutely,
is the most important thing.
Is it really?
Yeah. When Spielberg Origins.
You can tell your son about it when he's born, Major Spielberg.
So
yes, I will, sir.
Good. I love that commander. He's so good.
Yeah.
I want him to return another Godzilla films. Hope he's in Legendary Pictures.
I love English-speaking performers in Japanese Godzilla films, and I tell you something, they're only going to get
better. Much better.
Better.
We should try and be in a Godzilla film.
Fucking love it, but I would deliberately do like really poor acting.
Yeah, no, we'd have to. That won't be a problem, eh?
You can tell your son about it when he's born, Major Menzies.
Oh, Mr. Sloss. we need to make this happen.
The Major Spielberg gag is weird, isn't it? Like, again, it's a direct tip of the hat to Hollywood.
Yeah, and it's great fun. I love it, and that's a very Back to the Future joke to make.
Absolutely, you're totally right.
That is a total Twin Pines, Chuck Berry, R.I.P. kind of joke.
Yeah, that's very much Back to the Future sense of humour, actually. Well done. Well done.
Thanks, Steven.
Well done, Ross. We handshake.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's fine. And the best line in the film is, of course, "We got him. Take that, you dinosaur."
You damn dirty dinosaur.
This has been, as it always shall be, the Kaijusaurus Podcast.
Yes.
You can, as always, you can find us on the usual social media. Links are in every post about, what do I call them again? Show notes. And we talk about them every time. Twitter, Tumblr, what's the other ones? Facebook, Kaijusaurus Podcast. We're on iTunes. Leave us a rating or review.
Yeah,
really
please
generous.
do.
Kaijusaurus.tumblr.com is the blog from which
it's the place to be, the hub.
The hub of the Kaijusaurus empire from which this podcast is spun off. Mm-hmm. We are at home on SoundCloud, soundcloud.com/Kaijusaurus. We have individual Twitters, etc. It's all be linked in the show notes. I have been
Comment on the Facebook or on the Tumblr with what you thought about this movie.
Yes, please do.
We want to hear what you think.
Give us your interpretations of the time travel of this movie.
Yeah, no, please
I really want to hear what you think about that.
And also, nothing. I know we didn't have the chance really to talk about what the general consensus of this film is, so hit me up really quickly.
It's more hard to gauge with these films, honestly.
Yeah.
Because this is to me the first sort of run of films where you see a stark. This movie is, okay. As far as I can tell, this movie is sort of generally like, yeah, it's good. It's good.
But you love it.
Yeah, I do have a special place for it.
I kind of it's very memorable.
And we watched
That's what counts.
I got a new TV today.
It looks so good. Crisp, stunning Blu-ray.
This was the film that
40-inch television.
We broke it in with. It was great.
Oh, it was so good.
This has been the Kaijusaurus Podcast. I've been Steven. He's been
Ross. I've got to catch a train.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time for
Bye!
Godzilla vs. Mothra.
Oh, banging.